the Anishinaabe, Council of Three Fires, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Ottawa, Menominee, Miami, Ho-Chunk, many other tribes and nations. I also want to lift up my ancestry of Clay County, Alabama, and Noxubee County, Mississippi, where my ancestors resided before the Great Migration. So, pardon me. And as we introduce ourselves and become familiar with who else is in the room, we want to go ahead and ground in the forces, systems, people, and organizing legacies which have drawn us together today. An acknowledgement is one way to uplift these hidden and unseen forces and show gratitude for people and groups, historical and present, that allow us to be here together in this space. And following on our land acknowledgement, you know, what else informs your story? What else do you bring into this space, into this room today that needs to be acknowledged? So we acknowledge the legacies of folks who labored and toiled without compensation in this land. We acknowledge that the wealth of this economic system was accumulated by theft and exploiting labor and land. And so take a moment to reflect and share on whose shoulders you stand. And so as we continue grounding, I just want to invite us to take 6 breaths together as we begin this space. So settle into the space where you are. First breath. Notice your body and your breath. Inhale. Second breath. Notice the space you are in, and notice something in the space that keeps you grounded and present. Could be a plant, family heirloom, photo, glass of water. I always sit near a photo of myself as a child in my favorite sweater to my right. And then to my left, a painting my father did in college. Inhale. Third breath. Remember why you signed up for this workshop. Inhale. Fourth breath. Remember that you are worthy of your own bodily autonomy, of having your needs met, of the product of your labor, of thriving, and of your liberation. Inhale. Fifth breath. Notice the other humans in this virtual space you are holding, each with their own intentions and expectations. Remember that your liberation is bound up together, our collective liberation, together, ours with yours. Acknowledge those other folks. Inhale. Sixth breath. Notice your body and breath once more. Inhale. And as we come out of that grounding, feel free to share any other insights or additional acknowledgements in the chat that have come up for you. And I want to go ahead and hand off to our tech support folks to bring us into the space technically.
Thank you. And Bart, sorry, I had to update that slide. If you could refresh. Hi, I just want to welcome everybody. I'm Hafitha Akwai, pronouns she, her. I work at People's Hub, which is hosting this event with USN. Thank you everybody for coming. I'm here along with Bart, who'll be showing the slides. I'll be in the chat. If you have any issues with access, you can't hear, you can't see something that's happening, or you need some help with your equipment, feel free to message me in the chat. You can find me by typing in tech support in the to button, and or you can just raise your hand, or you can just ask in general in the chat, and we're happy to help you. Bart, can you go ahead and show that slide number 4, I believe? And the other thing is we do have available today closed, automated closed captioning. So if you click the little button that says CC or live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom window, you can have that turned on. It's automated, it's not perfect, but it can be really helpful. You can also view full transcript there, which will allow you to see the whole, basically a transcript of the entire event. And that only works within the main room, but it's a very useful feature. And if you have Zoom accounts of your own, you can activate that and turn that on. On the screen right now, there are a few images. One image shows you how you can click the reactions button to raise your hand and emote with emojis. You have the option of many emojis if you have a recent version of Zoom, but we will be using the raise hand feature. So it's good to know where that is. And then also if you want to rename yourself, as many of you already have, you would click the participants button and then find your name in the participants menu, click more and rename. And then a very important feature, which many of you have already used, is the chat button. You can click that to activate the chat and participate there. We'll be putting a lot of content in the chat box, and it's there's so many of us, it's probably going to be the main way we hear from folks. So feel free to use that, and thank you again for coming. I'm going to pass it back over to the facilitators.
All right, thank you very much, Fida. So we want to go ahead and make an introduction to our trainers. So again, I'm Mike Strode. I'm on Chicago on the ancestral lands of the Council of Three Fires. I'm a board member with the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network and founding coordinator of the Colonet Collaborative Time Bank. And I'll pitch over to Emily.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Kawano. My pronouns are she, her. I am in Western Massachusetts on the unceded territory of the Nipmuc. I am one of the founders of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, and I also am the director of Wellspring Cooperative in Springfield, Mass. Hand it over to April.
Thanks, Emily. I am April Taylor, she, her, hers. I am in central Kentucky on Shawnee and Osage territory, and I am a worker owner with the Wild Fig Worker Cooperative, and I'm on the education team at the Highlander Center, and I will pass it to David.
Hey y'all, my name's David Ferris. I use they, them pronouns. I'm on the education team with April at the Highlander Center, and I'm sort of between places, but I'm joining this workshop from Philadelphia, Lenape land, and glad to be with y'all. I'll kick it back to Mike.
All right, just a few expectations of this space. So this is not a training where we sit back and watch. This is going to be a space where we're going to ask for your engagement and participation. We really hope that you are inspired from this space to go back to your own location, your own communities, and build upon this framework, bring other groups into this solidarity economy practice. We'll be using a participation tool throughout this workshop called Poll Everywhere. So at the appropriate time, we'll go ahead and make sure that we put a link to Poll Everywhere in the chat so that you can make sure that you are able to participate that way. We might suggest that you keep a separate window with Poll Everywhere up, because we're going to ask you a few questions using that tool and really ask again for your engagement and your participation. We will be sharing the slides after this training, so you can look forward to a community. Go with the flow. It's okay that you might not take everything in today, but you'll have an opportunity to reflect. And in your small groups, just remember to share the air, one mic, one voice, speak from love and justice. And if there are challenges, drop back into this main room. We can make sure that you're able to get the support that you need. We are here for you. We are here together. Again, our liberation is collective. And with that, I am going to go ahead and just give you a brief agenda for today. So we started with our land acknowledgements and our other acknowledgements and our grounding. We've talked about our agreements and agenda. We're going to have some small group check-ins in the next exercise. We're going to go into a bit of defining capitalism. There's going to be some guided visualization. We'll touch upon the values and principles of the solidarity economy and, go into what's missing in an illustration exercise. We'll have a little bit of solidarity economy examples and practices in a breakout session. And then we'll talk about next steps, evaluation. And after that, it'll be a closing farewell, but not for long, because we will see you in liberation. So with that, I hope you're excited for what's to come. And I want to go ahead and pitch over to April to begin our small group.
Thanks, Mike. So we will be breaking into small groups for this exercise. We're wanting to ground this in one of the methodologies that's part of Highlander, and that is popular education. And it means we start with our experiences and build on that information. We look for patterns and then find new information and build analysis and make plans to change the world based on what we learn together. This is a workshop about transforming the economy, changing the very nature of how economics and government systems play out for us, our families, and our communities. And so following the popular education spiral, we're going to start with sharing our experiences tonight. We're going to spend 2 to 3 minutes in those breakouts, and we're wanting to share what is the economy to you and what has the economy meant for you, your family, and your community.
Thank you, April. This is Hafida with tech support. Can you just say again how many people you would wanted per breakout room?
I think we can go with maybe 3 per room.
Go ahead, Mike.
Maybe 3 per room would be good.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bart's going to go ahead and set those up.
All right, and again, I'll just welcome back. I hope you all got to know each other a little bit and got to discuss some of your ideas about the economy and how you relate to it in this current moment and what it means to you and your family and your community. Our next exercise here is going to take us into a discussion about capitalism. So we're going to shift a little bit in terms of how we think about a term. And we're going to think about our own definition of capitalism and how we experience it. We want to think of 5 words that come to mind when we think of it. And we're going to use a poll everywhere that we're going to drop a link to in the chat. And it's going to populate a word cloud that we're going to be able to view that's going to help collectively capture what everybody puts into the word cloud. And so again, that link is in the chat, and you're just going to click that link. And when it opens, you're going to pick 5 words that describe what your personal definition or experience of capitalism is. And again, it's going to produce a word cloud to help capture what we think and feel as a group.
Go ahead and transition there, Bart.
We're just waiting on this to load here. There we go. So we see extraction, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, white selfishness.
I'm sorry, where's the link to that?
It's in the chat. If you go up just a little bit, yes. And then selfishness, stress, anti-Blackness, work, gluttony, control. And so we often hear people say,
Oh, April's a little frozen there.
And what I'm going to do is go ahead and pass it to Emily to go through the 5 characteristics of capitalism.
Okay, thanks, April. Yeah, we can let that word cloud keep playing or stop it. It doesn't matter. So yeah, keep these terms. Keep that word cloud in mind. A lot of those words sort of are describing the impact of capitalism. I often hear people say, capitalism, it's just too hard to define. There are so many definitions. It's impossible to come up with a definition. And as a result, at least on the left in the progressive communities, it sort of becomes a catch-all for everything that we don't like. So I would like to offer to you a more precise definition. So this comes from the Center for Popular Economics. I've been a member for some decades. We are a collective of economists, progressive and radical economists, working to help people better understand how the economy works or how it doesn't work. So this is a definition that we've been using for more than 40 years. So it really has stood the test of time. This is a pretty simple, straightforward definition. There are many other aspects of capitalism that we could talk about, but here's like the boiled down basic definition, these 5 characteristics. So the first one is private ownership of the means of production. Sometimes we call it the MOPS. So the means of production are the things that you need to produce. Land, your factories, your tools, your equipment, your inputs. Okay, so those are the MOPS. The second thing is wage labor. So that's your workers, right? They do not own the means of production. The people who own the means of production, those are the capitalists, right? So they own and control. And then the wage labor, that's the workers. They do not own and control. And right there, with those two pieces, the capitalists and the workers, you have class struggle, right? Because the capitalists are trying to maximize profits, workers are trying to get a fair shake. So that's the third one. Profit maximization is a top priority. The fourth bullet point is commodity production. So that means that things are produced for sale, not necessarily for use. And for sale and for profit maximization. And the fifth thing is market exchange, which means that things are bought and sold through the markets, mediated through price. So those 5 things work together. Just because you have 1 or 2 does not mean that you are engaging in a capitalist mode of production. So for example, I have heard people who are worker owners in a worker cooperative say, yeah, we're a capitalist business because we do commodity production, we produce for sale, and we sell it on the market. And that's not true, because what does not hold for a worker cooperative is this split between the owner of the means of production and the workers, right? So the workers are the owners, okay? So that's it's important to have clarity about this. Next slide, please. So why is it important to have clarity about what is capitalism? So a lack of clarity about what capitalism is can easily lead to just reforming and thereby strengthening capitalism. So a good example of this is the New Deal that came out of the Great Depression. The New Deal really was stolen from the socialists and the communists, right? These were their platforms. It was stolen, kind of co-opted by the status quo and by the administration. And it saved capitalism by making it kinder and gentler. Lots of those programs we would applaud, right? They're good things, but it was used to save capitalism and to quell the very strong social unrest that was calling for fundamental system change at that time. So clarity about what our long-term vision is, it helps to ensure that solidarity economy is building transformative reforms, sometimes called non-reformist reforms. And an example of a current day struggle is the Green New Deal, right? That if it doesn't include a challenge around who owns and controls both the energy production, when you're creating jobs, what kind of jobs? Are they businesses that are owned and controlled by the workers, right? Unless a Green New Deal includes issues like that, addresses that, it's probably strengthening capitalism rather than pushing for system change. Okay, and so with that, I am passing it on to Mike.
All right. So I know that that part was dense and thick, perhaps, so there were a few things that we were juggling there, but this is, again, back to our experience, right? So this is going to be another activity for us to ground in our own experience and do a bit of a visualization exercise. So what I want you to do is, if you are comfortable, you can close your eyes. You can keep your eyes open. Don't worry about the words on the screen. These are just so that, you can do this exercise with your own groups later. So just, take a moment to listen and reflect. So go ahead and close your eyes and then imagine our vision of a just and sustainable world is fully realized. Breathe deeply. What can you smell? What can you hear? Imagine yourself walking. What do you feel beneath your feet? Asphalt sidewalk, wooded path, bare earth. Take a moment to scan the scene ahead of you. What do you see while you're walking? Bikes, garden, greenery, or something else? What type of buildings? Brick, wood, dome, square? Are there parks around you? What do they look like and who's using them? Who are the people around you? And do they feel familiar to you? You're starting to arrive at your destination. What have you come here to do? Play, socialize, visit, volunteer, vote, shop, work. Breathe again. And as you come back to this current moment, reflect on the values that were present in this world. And so now we are going to come back into this moment and we're going to call out and we're going to name some of those values that were present in the world that you created in your vision, in your mind. So we can go ahead and pivot to that next slide. All right, and so just go ahead and think about the top 5 values that were present in the world that you were visualizing. And we're going to go ahead and switch to this poll everywhere slide. So go ahead to the next one there. And you hopefully have the poll everywhere link up. So you should see a new question there. What values underpin your vision of another world? So, and here, 1 to 2 word phrases work best. So, I know you might be tempted to write a sentence or, but yeah. And you already see that, not only can you put your own values in there, but you can upvote a few of the values that other folks are naming. So I'm seeing community is, getting really top marks. There's some trust, there's some nature, there's collaboration. We've got mutual aid coming up there. Justice is showing. And Bart, if you can just hover over the values and scroll down, it should be able to take us down a bit. Yeah. So ability to thrive, laughter, love and generosity. Keep scrolling down there a bit. Co-ownership, freedom, abundance. Plant interdependence, abundance, love. Quite all right, Safira. If you have a longer phrase in your heart, that's cool. Compassion is showing up, free expression, creativity, community care, happiness, hobbies, safety, power, security. So these are all of the values that are underpinning the world that we are creating in our mind And these are the values that potentially could inform us in the solidarity economy that we are imagining for ourselves in the future. And so I want to go ahead and I'll pitch it now back to April to take us into the values and principles.
All right, so part of what we want to look at is what are the values and principles that help us ground the solidarity economy. And some of these came up in our word cloud in our visioning exercise. Solidarity, part of that is cooperation, mutualism, reciprocity, altruism, symbiosis. Democracy, so in politics, work, and community, how are we working together to govern ourselves in a way where we all have a say? Equity in all dimensions, race, class, gender, and ability. Sustainability that embraces the rights of Mother Earth. So nature was one of the things that came up. Pluralism, so not a one-size-fits-all model, a world in which many worlds fit. And if we can go ahead and go to the next slide there. Part of why we want to go over these values is it helps connect practices and people to a framework that helps us articulate a post-capitalist world. This is held by the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network that came out of RIPES, which is an intercontinental network for the promotion of social solidarity economy. They went through a 2-year international consultation process. They exist as a network of networks that are represented on all continents. This framework also consists of the International Labor Organization, which runs the annual SSE Academy. The United Nations also has a task force on the solidarity economy. Bolivia and Ecuador have solidarity economy written into their constitutions. And then of course, there are policy frameworks on a national level that are written into policy of several countries. And so if we can go to the next slide, part of what we want to look at is how could or does the solidarity economy show up in people's lives? And so part of that can be transformative justice. Justice is one of the things that came up on the word cloud. Community control of resources so that we're collectively owning things. Worker owner status so that we're not working for bosses. Community land trusts, credit unions instead of banks. Participatory democracy instead of representative democracy, and then tenant unions instead of landlords. And if we can go to this next slide. And then this also gives us some examples. So I don't have a boss. One of the ways that shows up, of course, is worker owners in a worker cooperative. I'm a worker owner at the Wild Fig Worker Cooperative. It's Kentucky's only Black-owned bookstore. And when it went up for sale, the community felt like it was a sacred and special enough space that they wanted to come together and raise the money to purchase it so that it could go on collectively owned and be stewarded and not exist for profit or go into hands that wouldn't see it as a sacred space. I don't have a landlord. That can mean I'm a member of a land trust, co-op, or intentional community. I don't pay for school. So that means that you can participate in a self-organized school or demand-free education. One of the things we've seen during the pandemic is folks come together to form childcare cooperatives or education cooperatives so that folks in a community can collectively meet a need that may not have been met because of the pandemic. I don't hoard my stuff. I take part in tool shares, barter clubs, and clothing swaps. One of the ways we've seen this show up more increasingly because of the pandemic is through mutual aid networks where communities come together and share resources. And I think that's one of the key ways that we want to continue to hold ground in communities to build on solidarity economy as we move forward from this moment and things continue to open up. I don't buy food that kills me or other people. I'm a member of a food co-op, a CSA, and a community garden. One of the things that I participate in is a collection of people who pool their resources to purchase local organic produce and then make it available on a sliding scale in neighborhoods that are food deserts so that everybody can afford that food. And then we also, through the Wild Fig Worker Cooperative, started Victory Gardens so that folks had access to community gardens in their neighborhoods. And then I don't let my bank profit off of me. This is an easy one for a lot of folks. I joined a credit union so that my money stays in the community. And then if we can go to the next slide. It's important that all of these sectors exist, and there's a huge foundation for the solidarity economy already because of the fact that there are entities that exist across all these sectors. It's important that the solidarity economy exists as an ecosystem because none of these iterations can exist alone in a vacuum. So some of the sectors that we see the solidarity economy represented in are production and reproduction. So those are worker cooperatives, do-it-yourself, care work, community gardens, like I mentioned, skill shares, and community production. Another sector is distribution and exchange. So social currencies, time banks, like the Womenist Working Collective in Philadelphia has the Reciprocity Community Time Bank. There's also another sector is consumption. So community land trust, resident-owned communities, and food co-ops. Finding a way to collectively own land and housing so that it's not exploited by a landlord is one of the key ways that we see communities come together to unite under this solidarity economy. And then another sector is finance. And of course, we talked about the example of a credit union. There's also peer lending, community loan funds, and direct public offerings. One of the things we see as part of the solidarity economy are financial cooperatives that help finance things within the solidarity economy. There's also governance, which includes participatory budgeting, community governance, which can look like people's assemblies, which are folks who get together on a local level and decide what policies or things they agree with, what maybe unmet needs they have that they want to meet together, and then decide to shift policy or build some kind of solidarity economy entity together through a people's assembly. There are also public sector things like schools and then policies. And so with that, what I'll do is kick it to Emily to talk about different systems.
Thanks, April. Yeah, I do want to just go back to that last slide just to think about that for a second and point out that there's a huge foundation to build on. And some of these practices, solidarity economy practices, are old, like as old as humankind or as long as people have been around. A lot of this DIY, a lot of this cooperative, collective community production, some is new, some is mainstream, like a lot of the public sector is mainstream, and some is kind of alternative, right? So it's all kinds of stuff. Solidarity economy might be a new framing, but these practices, many of them are quite old and have existed in many different cultures. Okay, so next slide. There are many different names. We have a commitment to pluralism in solidarity economy. It is not a one-size-fits-all model. And there are lots of different frameworks that are trying to build a more just and sustainable and democratic world. Things like the next system, the new economy, the community economy, donut economics, regenerate, right? Like you've heard different terms. And sometimes they're overlapping. Sometimes we would consider them completely consistent and aligned with solidarity economy. And solidarity economy is a big tent. So next slide, please. Why are we making a case for the solidarity economy? Why are we saying that this is an important frame? Well, one, that it is not a blueprint. It is not dogmatic. It is, we think of it as Zapatista say, a world in which many worlds fit. And so we believe that there are many, many paths to this other world. It's a big tent. It includes and overlaps with many other approaches. It is, but at the same time, it's clearly defined, particular, it's not just everything nice, right? There is a definition and also a clear vision that is post-capitalist. And also, finally, it is a growing global movement, as April mentioned, like the ways in which it's a global movement, and it is very much grounded in concrete practice and struggle. So that's why we make the case for solidarity economy. And let's see, you know, with that, we have got a break. We've got a 5-minute break. You know, we have a break. If there's somebody that wants to ask a question during break, I think that's fine. You can come off mute and ask a question or put it in the chat. And if somebody's keeping track of break, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have a question about the pluralism and making a case for solidarity economy. So, like, it seems like a lot of this stuff can happen outside of government, which is great, and I think that will be probably the best way to go for most of the things. But, like, if you're saying, I guess, doing grant writing or trying to get funding from a local government that might be more open to these ideas, and then they see post-capitalist, like, I mean, personally, I am okay with saying those things, but I just want to know, like, how would you explain it to somebody who is, like, not ready for that, but still open to the idea of, like, pluralism?
So what I would say is it's up to every single person to figure out how they're going to frame this. And you know your audience the best. And in different places, it's like code switching, right? It's really up to you. I personally, depending on what circles I'm in, like in my day job, building worker cooperatives, in my organization, it was really years before I really started talking about solidarity economy. And yet my interest and commitment to building cooperatives is completely informed by solidarity economy. And so some individuals, I talk about solidarity economy, but you know, I'm cautious, right? You don't want to turn people off before they can even hear. So it's really up to people. You shouldn't feel obliged. But we who are working in solidarity economy framework, we need to be clear ourselves, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That makes a lot of sense.
And can I add, I think the word equity, right? Community wealth building are words that I think connect to this work, and I think government entities would be comfortable with.
Yeah, that's great, Asada. I would add too, like, you know, we humans have values, and sometimes those values aren't like, we don't reflect on what they are. But I think if we can connect around our values, around like what really matters to us, then oftentimes we have more in alignment than we think, than if we're using words like capitalism or solidarity economy.
And I think sustainability, resiliency, those are some of the words that resonate, especially with, you know, with government.
Yeah, I mean, the values are pretty much universally accepted, right? I mean, those are not offensive. And the actual practices, right? In my experience, it is not threatening to talk about worker ownership. It is not threatening to more mainstream folks to talk about most of these practices, right? But I would, yeah, you can choose to leave out post-capitalism, but it's important that we know, right? If we are saying we work in this framework, it is important for us to know.
And so, I mean, as we are hitting our break point or a break end, I just want to maybe offer a final close that hopefully kind of encompasses all of the questions that have been posed in the chat that we may not have gotten to, because again, this is a one-on-one session. So we are trying to ground people in the sort of base of the solidarity economy, and there are possibly other spaces where more complex questions can be resolved, whether that's, you know, a coalition like New Economy or some other, you know, more local context. But the solidarity economy really is about taking solutions back to the ground level. So how SE addresses violence may not be something that we develop a national context for. It may be regional, it may be local. How SE addresses participatory democracy might look different in Chicago than it looks in Oakland. And that's okay. That's why every time we kind of do an activity, we ground it back to our personal and communal experiences, because that's where problems will be solved. So I will pause there and hand back the mic to, oh wait, am I next? I'm bringing us back from break, I forgot. Okay, so we can go ahead and pivot to the next slide. Yeah, so funny thing, we landed exactly where that answer put us, which is that here's an image. Now this image was designed by Caroline Woolard, and it's, a pinkish and purple illustration of people experiencing a day in the solidarity economy. Apologies if it is small on your screen. You will get these slides later, so you will have an opportunity to engage with the image more deeply. But there are several buildings with different names and folks going about their day on bikes, walking, other modes of transport. We see a building with the sign trade school, where we imagine that people are bartering their skills and knowledge out to one another. Next door to that is a sign that says community radio, where people might go to share ideas or music over the public airwaves. If you travel across to the left side of the image, you see a scene where there's a study center for further learning, which sits next to a food co-op, which we ideally, hope treats workers fairly and caters to the people with dietary restrictions. And all throughout this image, there's other activity happening, like a maker space, a medic tent, credit union, worker-owned cafe. So it's another visualization activity, as you look at this image and as you examine this image, or even as you think about what activity is happening in the community where you see solidarity economy popping off, what's missing? What's missing from this image? What is not represented in this image for you? So just take a moment to reflect on that and take another few moments to take in this image. We're going to go ahead and pivot to the next slide where we'll have another poll, and you can go ahead and, and drop into that poll. And as we see things populating, there's a cluster here. We've got gardens. We've got, is there internet in the solidarity economy, green space, trees, parks, theater, connections with nature, young children, dancing. I love dancing. Harmony with the environment, alternative wellness space. Waste management. I think a lot about how we can collectively manage our waste as a society. Accessibility, digital spaces, community organizing school, empty space, freeze. And so what I hope that we're getting at as we are filling in the gaps, which is another aspect of solidarity economy. Again, it's about equity in all dimensions, and it's about participatory democracy. So communities deciding what communities need. This is not a situation where we can prescribe a solution in this room that's going to fit your community. What's going to be needed for your community is what's going to be needed for your community. So we see some more things coming in. Let's see, music, cemetery. Yeah, so these are all things that again, we are building the economy that meets our needs, that fills us up, that addresses the things that we require. And so the solidarity economy requires most of all our imaginations. It requires our capacities to imagine what's missing and to rally for what's missing, and to acknowledge those who are written out or who are drawn out of the picture. And right now, in the context we're in right now, in capitalism, what's most efficient? And so we don't go for efficiency. We go for what's hard. And sometimes, as noted in the chat, participatory democracies are hard and slow and take a lot of time. But hopefully the time that we take to get to these solutions builds a world that has greater consent and greater consensus for all of the folks involved, because everyone is involved here. And so with that, we can go ahead and stop the share, because I'm going to go ahead and pitch to David, who's going to take us into the beautiful solutions section.
All right, y'all, we're really excited to share some examples of the solidarity economy that we've been working with partners all over the country and the world to help document. So we want to honor Beautiful Solutions Project. They're working on a book actually right now, and it'll be out hopefully sometime this year. Cross your fingers. Really documenting a bunch of these examples and others of the solidarity economy. We want to honor them and all the work that they've done in partnership with Highlander and all of us, and to create these cards. The Center for Popular Economics also created similar Beautiful Solutions cards decades ago. So we're building on the work. And we're going to break everybody into groups, 8 groups, small groups of 5 or 6 people. And each group is going to have 4 Beautiful Solutions Stepping Stones cards. So if you go to the next slide and just show them what one of those cards looks like. And I invite you to read, have everybody in the group read a card to the rest of the group, and then discuss what is mind-blowing about this example. And then after you've talked about all, as many as you can in the time that we give you, what's your most mind-blowing example? Like, which card did you find most mind-blowing as a group, and why? And also spend a little bit of time talking together about what makes these possible. So again, discuss what is mind-blowing and why about these. Pick one that you want to share back with the group that you think is the most mind-blowing. And then what makes these possible? And we're going to do another word cloud around what makes these possible after we come back. Are there any questions before we get into small groups for about 25 minutes?
This is Nadia. Are we going to randomly be put in assigned to random cards, or do we get to choose?
You're going to be put into a group, and the group is going to have a letter assigned to it, and that letter corresponds to some of the cards.
Okay, thanks, David.
Of course, if you want to go rogue and read some of the other cards, feel free.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so we're gonna we are gonna copy a link to the. Oh yeah, go ahead, Fahida.
Yeah, if you want to copy the link into the chat, just make sure I put the right one. I was just changing making sure nobody could accidentally edit it. Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know. I know there's a few folks who've reached out to me and said they can't participate in the small breakout. So what I would suggest, Bart, if it's not too late, if you could add a quiet room. Add another room for quiet. And if you're unable to participate in the breakout, go ahead and just put a Q in front of your name or an asterisk in front of your name, and then Bart will know that you need to go into the quiet room. Does that make sense? I'll put that in the chat, the instructions.
Great, thanks, Afida. So I put the link into the chat. You should be able to open those slides now and get into the slides and be able to see the Beautiful Solutions cards. Again, read through them as a group, like take turns reading a card. What's mind-blowing about these examples and why, and what makes these possible? And then pick one as a group that you want to share back when we come back from the small breakout groups. Yeah, so don't focus on all those questions, just focus on what's mind-blowing and what makes these possible. All right, y'all.
Great.
We're ready.
We're ready.
Thanks, Bart.
Sorry, that was a fake out. Now they're ready.
All right. Enjoy your time digging into these examples. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, welcome back. Hope you are super energized about all those amazing, juicy, delicious, exciting, colorful, beautiful solutions that you got to talk about in your small groups. And we're super excited to hear which ones you found mind-blowing and why. And so we're gonna go backwards, you know, like we do through the alphabet, and start with group H. What was your most mind-blowing example? Somebody can come off mute or drop a little description in the chat. Either way, we want to hear from each of the groups. Anybody in group H want to share?
We really liked the Calvary time bank, I think it was called, and one of our group members had experience coordinating a time bank. They could share more if they wanted, but I think that we centered a lot of our conversation on that, as well as some of the other things. I'll mute.
Cool. Were there particular things that you found mind-blowing about it?
Maybe if any of my group mates want to answer that particularly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. This is Sean. Yeah, I would say yeah, and I can even ask Letiera to share a bit more about what she's doing in Philadelphia with her work. But I think maybe it's mind blowing from a comprehension standpoint of just trying to get your head wrapped around it. Because because when you're not doing it, it's such a cool idea, but then you're just like, okay, how do you actually decide on the units of measure, and doing something as simple as an hour of time seems like an elegant solution for that. But just like we talked about with, pluralism, there's plenty of different ways to go about this. So I think maybe mind blowing from the standpoint of like, whoa, like where to begin, maybe, for such a cool idea. But yeah, maybe
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
For somebody who didn't have that card, what is a time bank in 5 words? Sean, for somebody who didn't have that card, what is a time bank? How would you describe it in 5 words?
I can respond to that.
Oh, thanks, Latier. Yeah, go for it.
It's a service exchange system that uses time as currency instead of money.
Great. Awesome. Thanks so much, Group H. We want to hear from Group G. Group G. What was the most mind-blowing solution y'all talked about?
I can kick us off. There was an internet situation that really blew our mind called community technology. And this was like communities create a local intranet between, like some kind of local network. And it blew our mind, like both that you could share, I really love that you could share movies, but you can like share things among neighbors. And then also like these internets were able to keep communicating with each other even during disasters like Hurricane Sandy.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Karen. Yeah, resilient community-owned technology. Yes. Cool. Let's hear from Group F. What you got for us? What's your mind-blowing solution?
I guess I can represent F, and then anyone else feel free to add. A couple of things that I think stood out for us in ours. One was the Alaska Permanent Fund, which has its issues. It's based on like money from oil, but it gives basically like it's like a universal basic income in Alaska, basically, where it just gives money to everybody that lives in Alaska. So the what gets the money there, obviously a little bit like, something to think about in terms of like resources in the earth and stuff like that. But the idea of just giving money to folks, is a huge part, I think, of how do we get resources to different people. So, and the other one that we had, I think that we were really taken by was it's up like a few in DC. I think it's one DC, I think it was called. Just by these folks that like bought this 84 unit building together and created like a co-op of just living together, which is like super awesome to think about in terms of like our space where we live and stuff like that. So anyone else in Group F, feel free to add on.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Stefan, for sharing for Group F. And feel free to chime in on the chat as well. Group E, folks with the grape slats. We want to hear from you. What did you find mind-blowing?
Hi, I was in Group E. I guess I'll just share some things because we kind of got into introducing each other. I feel like we jumped into reading it before even like getting to know each other a little bit. I'm really grateful for the amount of time you gave us because it created a whole connection through the different things that we read.
I'm
But
so glad to hear that.
yes, and I know that we were all kind of interested in all of them. All of them were very mind-blowing, but some people were mentioning that the Emilia Romagna, Italy one was pretty great. And this one right here.
Yeah, and maybe in like
co-op as well.
Can you say in 10 words what Emilia Romagna is, and then a little bit about why you thought it was so mind-blowing?
Well, I think the idea that crowdfunding is involved in this is just really great, and it's something that should very much so be like normalized in these different types of living situations. So that's just something that I'm very like happy to see. And something like also that I thought was really great in our different solidarity economy ecosystems was the land trust, the community land trusts. So that was very neat to learn about as well, because I mean that's the start of a lot of things, is you need to have land. And I was informed that there are wildfires happening in Oregon right now from 2 people who are in my group. So that right there is automatically connected to like that what's happening right now. That could be a solution.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Emilia Romagna has like one of the most dense cooperative economies in the world, and has been around for more than 100 years, survived fascism, Italian fascism, right, in the 20th century. Lots of really amazing stuff to learn from places who've really built the infrastructure to have this be 30% of their GDP. Like, what? That's amazing. The cooperative solidarity economy contributing so much to meeting people's needs in that area. It's awesome. And then land trusts, like April was saying earlier, when communities get to own and control and make decisions about what happens on land, right? We'd a lot less likely to see things like gentrification and people get pushed out and displacement and houselessness. Like, this is ours. We're going to make decisions together about how we're going to meet our needs using this land. So thanks so much. Let's go to Group D. What did y'all find mind-blowing?
I can start for the group. Well, I guess there were 2 things, like 2 main things that we talked about the most. So like first, the Art City Defenders, the no bail program. One of our members had like experience working with no bail, and just like they have like such a multifaceted approach to it. Like there's a bunch of different aspects of the mass incarceration problem that they deal with, which we all thought was really great. And then also the Gaviotas, I definitely said that wrong, but it's like a community where they like kind of govern themselves. They don't have any like mayors or jails or weapons or anything like that. And they just like, they're in Colombia, I believe, and they just have agriculture and they provide schooling to everybody and they provide housing and food to everyone. So we thought it was like a great example of like a community that is self-sufficient and working to support everybody in the community.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Is it Fallon? Is that how you pronounce your name? It's Fallon. Great. Yes. Lovely example. So just for time, I'm going to go to the next group. Group C. What was mind-blowing? What was your most mind-blowing example?
They were all quite mind-blowing to all of us, especially the farming, ocean farming, but we talked a lot about the mobile home cooperative and how, in addition to what the previous groups have said about that kind of autonomy over the land and the space and the home, there's a real kind of pushback against the kind of cultural ideas around mobile home residents and around the, intelligence or agency that folks who live in mobile homes may have. So basically, instead of being renting mobile homes from various landlords, folks kind of came together to co-own them and share in the decision making to not be indebted to some kind of corporate interest, but rather, in one example, a community member was able to loan the money and then everyone else was able to pay back in increments. And one example actually bought the roads and water lines so they could control their own infrastructure as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. Thanks. Yeah, that group, so Dulce Lamita, who was mentioned on that card, has a long-standing relationship with Highlander. Is it immigrant community? Spent a long time fighting ICE, and learned about the solidarity economy and some co-ops through Highlander and through networks that folks that they met through the organizing work, and were able to build out that mobile home cooperative that now includes, I believe, 30 properties, like 30 mobile homes in their co-op. So really cool work happening. Group B, what's your mind-blowing example?
We spent a lot of time talking about each of them, so we didn't come to a conclusion, but based on the conversation, I think both the participatory budgeting project and Thunder Valley, I think, really took us. So Thunder Valley, or yeah, we'll start there. PVP, the amount of power of getting 20% of the budget to work with was really incredible. And then over to Thunder Valley, what really took us was the base in community and identity and shared values and shared culture, and also bringing in the element of spirituality as a guiding principle and a guiding, just a guiding way to organize their work was really beautiful and inspiring. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, participatory budgeting, like this is about governance too, not just economy, right? Like this is about us getting to have a say over where our tax dollars get spent. Mm-hmm. And we have to ground in spirit. If we're not grounding in spirit and our connection to each other, it's going to be hard to sustain this work long term. Group A, bring us home with your mind-blowing example.
I can speak a little bit for our group. So we actually kind of broke off from the slides, and because one of our group members is doing awesome work called Charlottesville Beyond Police. And I don't want to speak for you if you want to talk. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but if you would like to speak, but they're definitely showing, so could jump in whenever you want to.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so my name is Ange. I use she, her pronouns. We, as an extension of Charlottesville Beyond Policing, we developed the Visions of Liberation Free Store, where we it's basically a grocery store, like a grocery store and a thrift store. We have all types of things. But it's free to the community. All the items are free, food, fresh produce now, and we have a community refrigerator, and hygiene products, household items, clothing. We have formula, baby products, beds, dressers, books. For the community for free. It's a no barrier initiative that's doing actually pretty well as far as supporting the community. We've supported, I think I said, like maybe 12 to 1,500 people since February. So,
Yeah, it's good.
and then an extension of that, an extension of that is the creation. We were in the midst of creating a bail and commissary fund, but there are already two bail funds that, one bail fund that Charlottesville can utilize. So we went with the commissary fund where, and that will be developed in like the next, I mean, it's already developed, but it would be public in the next 1 to 2 weeks.
Great, thanks so much for sharing that awesome example. That's what we want, to keep adding to this list, and to keep learning from each other. So glad you got to dig into that in your small group. And as we think about our next steps, like we want to ground in what ground we've made during the pandemic, like how have we adopted solidarity economy practices and lived into these values as a way to survive in this pandemic? Like, how have we reduced our reliance on capitalism and increased our reliance on each other, our communities, and people in our lives? And how do we not lose that ground, right, as things start to open up and shift and supposedly go back to normal? Like, how do we not let things go back to normal? How do we keep the ground we've gained and really build on the mutual aid infrastructure and the relationships that we've built? So we want you to think about that when we think about our next steps. But before we go to our next steps, we want to first ask you, what made these possible? What makes these solutions possible? What are the ingredients? Think of a couple ingredients. We're going to go back to the word cloud, and we're going to drop that link in the chat so you can re-access it. And what are some things that make these possible, make these beautiful solutions possible? What are some things that need to be in place? And don't overthink it, right? Like, an example is like relationships. Relationships are so key to making these things possible. Meetings is another really simple one, right? So just don't overthink it. Think about what are some ingredients, and we're gonna make a solidarity economy stew together in this word cloud. So jump into that word cloud. Tell us what you think makes these possible. So I see trust, generosity, pooled funding, community care and values, people, of course, right? This takes people. Humility, willingness to learn from each other, absolutely. Awareness, respect and patience, like what are the skills and values and capacities we have to cultivate in ourselves in order to live this out? Criticism as care, hope, wealth redistribution, being good at conflict, absolutely. Like if we're going to be working together, we're going to get into conflict. We got to be able to embrace that and move through it. I see that coming up a couple times. And building trust along the way, absolutely. Consistency, yeah, and persistence, like keeping at it. It stopped loading for me, and I know we're getting low on time. So keep them coming in. And also, yeah, no, that's fine, Bart, thanks. We also want you to think about your next step. So what's like one immediate thing you can do next? Again, like how do we keep holding the ground we've gained in this time? How do we build on the relationships and the work that we are already doing where we are, right? Like don't feel bad about where you are and what is going on around you. I promise you that these kinds of beautiful solutions are happening literally all around you. So maybe going out and learning about what's happening in your neighborhood and in your community is your next step. Or maybe it's like, well, I built some relationships with folks on my block. Like, what could we do to build this out where I live? So learn more about credit unions. Yeah, learning is a great next step. Looking for ways to engage my community. Learning more from the cards. Yeah, we're gonna send these cards, these beautiful solutions. Well, you got the link, but we'll send them out too and dig more into those. Talking together, holding space in the community garden to build solidarity, telling others about solidarity economy. Yes, that's what we hope you will do coming out of this. Feel free to use any of these resources. Support these amazing organizations. Oh, yes, I'm sure they would love that. Talk to a friend who knows a lot about these experiments and learn more. Join more workshops like these, gathering with people. This is for you. So if you've got your next step, please share it here. Please share it in the chat. Make sure you got a plan for what you're gonna do next. And with that, one thing that we want to invite you to do is in the registration page, but it helps us pay for tech support and closed captioning and interpretation and other things. If you want to donate to USN, we will put those into donations into workshops like this and developing more resources to share. We really want to hear from you. So please share your thoughts about how this was for you. We want to hear a couple appreciations, and we want to hear some tips or things that you think we should change. We already heard from some of you. I want to go ahead and own that we made a mistake. We shared a slide of an image that came out of a collective project called Solidarity NYC. And we got permission from the artist to share it, but it was developed as part of this collaborative community project. And we should have attributed it back to Solidarity New York City, and we should have talked about the campaign that it was a part of. So, we're going to learn from that, and we would love to hear other tips and changes from you in this moment. If you want to share some ideas for us in the chat, we'd also love to hear your appreciations and what you loved as well. So thanks for sharing those as well. I'm going to drop a link to an evaluation form where you can share. Oh, yep. Thanks. Hafida just did that. If you want to share more in-depth feedback, I really do appreciate that. And I thought we were behind time, but look at that. This is we're ending right on time. This is so great. I'm so grateful to be here with y'all. Thanks for everything you brought to this discussion and to all the energy brought to the small groups. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in future spaces together and building out this new economy for us. I'll kick it to Mike to close us out.
Yes, thank you very much, David, and thank you all of the folks that are participating. Thank you to my other co-facilitators, Emily and April. Thank you to our tech team, Hafida and Bart. And all of these seen and unseen forces that are championing this work, moving things forward. So yeah, we do learn a lot from those surveys. So if you have time to pull that evaluation link up, and just have it at the ready. It's a few brief questions that will really help us to improve these sessions. That would be very valuable. But with that, we're going to close just on 3 breaths. So 1 breath for showing up today. Thank you. 1 breath for everyone else who showed up today. 1 breath for being powerful together. Now, pick somebody on the screen, find a face that you gravitate towards, send them some love, throw them some energy, clap for them, champion them, lift them up, throw them towards the ceiling, hands up high, hearts afloat. It's all over the place. Throw emojis in the chat. Do whatever you do. Go crazy, because in the solidarity economy, what's a revolution if you can't dance? So I hope you're dancing. And it has been beautiful being here with you all. We are complete, and